Okay, I'm gonna let the video upload right quick. All right, so we're in here. I'm Stock Exchange, and this is Trump and the GE. Jason Whitlock got Stephen A. Smith on skates. Uh, these two guys are going at it, and Jason Whitlock has been, triggering black folks for decades. Seems like I started following him when he was writing out of Kansas City, and he would repeat these tropes about black folks for the entertainment of white people. Repeat a bunch of tropes about black athletes and what's wrong with black athletes. No matter who he wrote about, he always had something negative to say about black athletes. It got him from Kansas City to New York. He's bounced around a little bit, but now he's on the blaze. And now seems to be in the past I thought he made a lot of bad faith arguments. Now he seems to be spot on. He's basically following the facts and going to wherever the facts lead, like a journalist would. And the thing about Jason, he doesn't need to be anybody's friend or anybody's pal. He doesn't have to be liked. He doesn't have to say things to be liked. He doesn't have to repeat random Democratic talking points or say things to get black people to like him to get his racial bona fides. He doesn't need respect as an athlete. I mean, he played sports. He doesn't have to get you to believe he was a great athlete. He played D1 football at Ball State. He's an athlete. So he's a legitimate journalist and a legitimate athlete. So I'll leave it at that. He recently wrote an article on Stephen A. Smith's book. I didn't know Stephen A. had a book out, so he's actually doing PR for Stephen A. and giving them free publicity, and it's gotten Stephen A. triggered. He compared. He made reference to Cat Williamson's interview with Shannon Sharp, where Cat called out people in the industry. He called out Cedric the Entertainer, Steve Harvey, Ricky Smalling. He called Kevin Hart a plant. And Jason Whitlock is saying that Stephen A. Smith is the equivalent of Kevin Hart. The sports industry's Kevin Hart. He's an industry plant. And apparently, Stephen A. Smith didn't like it. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from his article on The Blaze about Stephen A. All right. So it says, Fearless, does Cat Williams' interview expose Stephen A. Smith as a fraud? And the interview generated 45 million views, by the way, with Club Shay Shay. And Cat Williams has a high level of intellect. He's really smart, and he gives facts. He's a comedian, but he gives facts. He doesn't just say stuff. And people have responded to him, but they haven't called Kevin. Nobody's called Cat Williams a liar, and they haven't responded to these substantive claims he's made. They talk and talk and talk, but they don't respond to the facts, which is seen to be similar to what Stephen A. is doing. He responded, but he doesn't address the claims that Jason Whitlock made. Got emotional and made a lot of ad hominem and attacks, but he didn't call Jason Whitlock. He didn't address the claims made by Jason Whitlock, point by point. But here's some of the high level stuff he said about Stephen A. Smith. He parsed through his story. Said, when I listened to Cat Williams talk about Kevin Hart, Steve Harvey, my mind immediately drifted to Smith's memoir. Smith's story doesn't add up. Either his story adds up or it doesn't. Period. He or his ghostwriter claims he received a full basketball scholarship from Winston-Salem State after a one-day tryout in February 1988. A former Winston-Salem State basketball player allegedly drove Smith from New York to North Carolina for the tryout after Smith impressed the former player during a one-on-one matchup on a playground court. According to his book, Smith arrived on campus on a Saturday, checked into a hotel, and woke up Sunday morning to participate in a scrimmage. Before I go farther, let me add that Smith played 1 year of high school basketball. He rode the bench for 1985-86 Thomas Edison High School team as a senior. In the book, he says his one season of prep basketball ended abruptly when he failed a single assignment in a single class. He didn't fail the class, he failed an assignment and was removed from the team. So basically, he set the bench for his high school team, but he played Division II basketball. That's what the story's saying. And it says after his abbreviated high school career, Smith matriculated to Fashion Institute of Technology College of New York. It's a school for women and men interested in joining the fashion industry. Smith enrolled so he could play on FIT's junior college basketball team. He rode the bench at FIT too. In his book, Smith described a work, school, basketball, and commute schedule that sounded humanly impossible. So he's questioning the schedule he's describing in the book. Either the schedule makes sense or it doesn't. So after riding the bench in high school for a year, riding the bench at a junior college for a year, and impressing an old player on a New York basketball playground, Smith earned a tryout in front of Winston-Salem State's legendary coach, Clarence Big House Gaines, and this tryout happened on a Sunday at the end of the regular season. Not many college teams hold scrimmages on a Sunday, one day after playing an important regular season game on a Saturday. But that's how important it was for Big House to get a glimpse of a 6'1", 150-pound guard with no high school or junior college accomplishments. And Big House Gaines, I think, as a matter of context, he coached Earl the Pearl Monroe, who played for the Baltimore Bullets and eventually with the New York Knicks, where he was a backcourt mate with Clyde Frazier. So this is who Big House Gaines is. He coached elite players in the past. According to Smith's account, he knocked down 17 straight shots in the scrimmage, and Big House offered him a full scholarship immediately after the practice. This is laughable. In Big House's own memoir, he frequently complained about his limited budget at WSSU, which supposedly the Gaines gave one. He says the historically black Division II program was not flush with cash and a dozen scholarships to toss around. We're supposed to believe that Gaines gave one to a frail kid he saw play for an hour. I cannot appropriately do justice to the far-fetched story Smith painted in Straight Shooter. Smith has struggled to explain it again on national TV. In November 2022, on the set of NBA Countdown with Malia Andrews, Jalen Rose, and J.J. Redick, ESPN ran a graphic of Smith, Rose, and Redick's senior stats. Smith allegedly averaged 1.5 points per game. He said he scored so few points because he played in just one game after a knee injury. It's impossible to average 1.5 points a game if you played in one game. So he's saying that the guy can't tell the same story the same way twice to save his life. He can't recount the story the same way. He struggled telling the story. That's what Jason Whitlock is saying. He struggled to explain it. The truth doesn't have to make sense, and you can remember the truth very vividly. It doesn't have to make sense. You shouldn't have to struggle to recollect the truth, or recollect facts. And it's impossible to average 1.5 points in a game, which is true. It may seem minor, but it is impossible to average 1.5 points in a game. Then Jason Whitlock shows his stats, the actual stats. In August 2023, on his podcast show, Smith backtracked and said he never played a single game at WSSU. It's a bizarre contention, especially considering Smith is listed on a 1991 WSSU stat sheet as having played 9 games. So it shows he played 9 games in 1991. He averaged, maybe scored 15 points, which rounds out to about 1.5 points a game. So there's a lot of small discrepancies in these stories. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but these are discrepancies that Jason Whitlock is pointing out, and it seems like Stephen A. Smith took a story and embellished it. That's what it seems like. Why would you do that? I have no idea. But it got Stephen A.'s dander up, and this is how he responded on his podcast, Stephen A. Smith Show. I'm going to play a couple episodes. This is for critique and commentary only. It's for critique. I'm going to share my screen.
For years, at least 9 to 10 years, saying absolutely nothing about this man. I never uttered the words fat bastard out of my mouth until a few months ago. So that means that the previous 9 years, you never heard me speak on him at all. But now it's necessary. Excuse me. Because you see, if you listen to the fat bastard, I didn't play high school ball, even though my coach's name was Harvey Stoller. It was Thomas A. Edison Vocational and Technical High School. I played there my senior year. I was in a basketball tournament at Fashion Institute of Technology where I dropped 27 points and got a scholarship because the coach came calling me after that and what have you. If you listen to him, I never had a scholarship to Winston-Salem State, even though it's on the books. Just call the university. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm an honorary doctorate member. I have an honorary doctorate from Winston-Salem State University because of my contributions to Winston-Salem State. I'm called Dr. Smith. Has something to also do with the contributions that I make because I believe about upliftment. I'm an ambassador for HBCU Week, and I've partnered with Ashley Christopher and Mir Persicki in Delaware and others to generate over 10,000 scholarships in excess of over $65 million in scholarships for African Americans. But this man will tell you I'm lying. He even went so far as to say my autobiography, where I talk about my mother, my father, my sisters, the business, my hiring and firing and rehiring at ESPN. I didn't write it. I didn't write my own memoir, which, by the way, is a New York Times bestseller, something he wouldn't know anything about. Did you know that it's now on paperback? It just came out yesterday on paperback. Do you know that you could go to Amazon.com, straightshooterbook.com, or a bookstore nearest you to get my book in paperback? Do you know that when people are normally selling 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 copies,
Okay, so there, Stephen A. Smith speaks a lot of facts, but he doesn't address the claims that Jason Whitlock made. Just because you can't disprove Jason Whitlock's claims with facts that don't address his claims. You can't prove that you didn't embellish the story by stating other facts that that you called Dr. Smith, which I believe, that you've created 10,000 scholarships and $65 million, and you've believe in uplift and you've given back to the school. That's impressive. You're paying it forward. Stephen A. Smith is paying it forward. That's impressive, but it doesn't address Stephen A. Smith doesn't address Jason Whitlock's claim, and calling Jason Whitlock fat and calling him out his name and making ad hominem attacks doesn't address Jason Whitlock's claims. So I'm going to go to another clip where he discusses people who criticize Jason Whitlock.
and firing and rehiring at ESPN. I didn't write it. I didn't write my own memoir, which, by the way, is a New York Times bestseller, something he wouldn't know anything about. Did you know that it's now on paperback? It just came out yesterday on paperback. Do you know that you could go to Amazon.com, straightshooterbook.com, or a bookstore nearest you to get my book in paperback? Do you know that when people are normally selling 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 copies, I've sold over 400,000? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? But he will tell you, I didn't write it. He's seen my writing. Really? This article is an article written on Deadspin.com. The title, How Jason Whitlock is Poisoning ESPN's Black Grant Land. Because remember, Bill Simmons, who's now at Spotify doing a great job, obviously had Grantland at ESPN, and upon his departure, Jason Whitlock was supposed to take up the mantle and create a black website for folks. This article was written by a Greg Howard, published on April 27th, 2015. The same Jason Whitlock that said he's seen my writing, the same Jason Whitlock that implied that I couldn't write, the same Jason Whitlock that said that I'm lying. That I'm lying. What does this man do? Why would I call up this article? There's a plethora of reasons why I would do so, ladies and gentlemen. One of the reasons would be because it's as in depth as it gets about how scurrilous, how trifling, how despicable this man is. But there's also another reason that I'd pick up this article. Let me read the graph to you that it says. Keep in mind, Stephen A. can't write. This staff, the one Whitlock was praising by way of warnings that if the writers and editors wouldn't align with his vision, he would get rid of them, was not the one Whitlock wanted. The Undefeated, because that was the name of the title before it ultimately became And Scape. The Undefeated was originally meant to attract the best and brightest young black talent in the country, with Whitlock's aim set so high that he at one point seriously tried to recruit the Atlantic's Ta-Nehisi Coates, the sharpest cultural commentator in the business today. As things worked out, though, those young writers comprehensively refused to work with him. So did big-name ESPNers like Howard Bryant, Jamel Hill, and Stephen A. Smith.
Okay, so he gives an article that someone wrote and did spin about Jason Whitlock back in 2015, that apparently he was in Grantland and he didn't do a good job, and he tried to recruit black writers unsuccessfully because they didn't want to work with Jason Whitlock. Those may be true stories. I don't know. So there's a lot of ad hominem attacks, a lot of straw man arguments. Whether Jason Whitlock was in Grantland, whether Jason Whitlock couldn't recruit Jamel Hill, whether Jason Whitlock is fat or what have you, it doesn't address any of the claims from the article. The article seemed like it was spot on. Like he was very specific to some of the claims that some of the things in statements made in Stephen A. Smith's book. Not that Stephen A. Smith didn't play high school basketball. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say he didn't get his scholarship. It just seems like the story may have been embellished a little bit. That he didn't address it. The fact that he tried to address the Jason Whitlock, I find weird. Why would Stephen A. Smith care what Jason Whitlock thinks about his story if it's a true story? It seems odd that he even paid attention to Jason Whitlock, and then he addresses him with so much vitriol, like he's getting his dander up over a supposedly true story that can be easily verified by somebody. But I mean, some of this, again, you can't average 1.5 points a game in a basketball game. That seemed like not a fact that Stephen A. Smith would get wrong. He played in one game, didn't play in any games. Then then Jason Whitlock showed he played 9 games. That's not something you would get wrong. So it just seems like a lot of small discrepancies. So if you the thing about, I'm not saying he's a liar, but the thing about people who lie, if they'll tell a small lie, they'll tell a big lie. And they'll tell 5, 6, 7, 8 small lies. They'll tell 5, 6, 7, 8 big lies. And again, the fact that he addressed Jason Whitlock, I find odd, and the fact that he's attacking him personally with this type of language, I find really odd. So it makes it seem like, Jason Whitlock has definitely gotten Stephen A. Smith's dander up. He has him on skates. He doesn't address the facts, which a journalist is supposed to do. You work at ESPN, you're supposed to address facts. No reason to put a book out there that's not factual. And these are substantive claims that Jason Whitlock is making. He's saying you're making the story up. And he said you're industry playing. Either you're industry playing or you're not. That you average 1.5 points a game. Either you did or you did. Which one is it? You crack your knee, something. Either you did or you didn't. Um, Either alumnus drove you from New York to North Carolina for a tryout with Big House Gaines, or either he did or he didn't, and Big House Gaines had a 1-day trial for you at the end of the season for someone who sat the bench in high school and sat the bench in FIT. Either he did or he didn't. But anyway, Jason Whitlock has been pretty accurate over the past few years. He's basically, if you want to look for accuracy in terms of the facts and giving, I think, an honest assessment of things that don't necessarily fit the traditional narrative, you got to watch Jason Whitlock or read Jason Whitlock. He's not trying to be anybody's friend. He's not repeating random talking points to be anybody's buddy. He's not trying to fit in. And most of the people in the corporate media seem like they're trying to fit in. They want to be liked. They want black people to like them. So they want to wear white to a white party and say silly stuff about that they think black folks already believe. Jason Whitlock doesn't do that. He's not trying to be anybody's buddy. But it seems like what he's saying now is more genuine than it was 10, 15 years ago when he was repeating these random tropes about black folks. Now it seems like he's becoming, he's just letting the facts, he's following the facts wherever they may. And the story about Stephen A. Smith, I hadn't heard of it, but Stephen A. Smith hasn't done anything to refute these claims. So I'll leave it at that. But that's Trump and the G. Jason Whitlock got Stephen A. Smith on skates. Thank you for listening. Thank you.